From a self-published perspective, what is the importance of a good editor in order to make sure that your work is taken seriously?
The question of an editor within self-publishing is interestingly different from the question of an editor when it comes to like traditional publishing. With an editor within traditional publishing, they can act as a gatekeeper. They can say, this stuff isn't ready for traditional publishing. But if someone is an editor and you're self-publishing, then that person becomes less of a gatekeeper and more of an advisor. You can pick someone whom you trust and who you know is going to lead you to where it is that you think the work is going to go, as opposed to like them saying something like, well, this isn't ready to kind of enter into the publishing circuit. So there's something really interesting there where like people could choose to have an editor or they could choose not to have an editor. And if they choose to have an editor, why are they choosing to have an editor? Like, I think that that's a very interesting question for the author to answer. The wrong way to think about an editor is to look for someone who has the answers, like who can tell you from a kind of top down what the thing should be. And I think that sometimes writers will turn to editors for that. It's almost as if someone, whether it's a teacher or an editor, could give you a pamphlet or something that says, do this, don't do that. But before they've ever actually read the writing. And that's like the part that's maybe like most tragic. That's the reason why it's so important to have not just some sort of big name person to edit your work or that kind of stuff, but it's someone who you can trust. And there's so much that's in that, It's kind of like you've got the sense that they are intuiting where the work wants to go. I'm speaking about the work as if it were a living thing, and not even necessarily where the author wants it to go, but where it wants to go. That to me is what the best editors do. They are divining where it is that the work wants to go, and they're following it, and they're telling the writer, this is where it's taking me.
So if we view creative writing as almost a living thing separate from, say, the writer themselves, I know a lot of people choose to outline, but if we view it as a living entity, is freeform the way to go, where you just write, and whatever's on the page, you then have something to either use, discard, or set aside, or to inspire you?
When I talk to writers, and they're asking me this exact question about outlining, oftentimes it's because they want to do something that involves not wasting time. It's like, I'm going to write an outline because I don't want to do unnecessary writing. It gets really deep really quickly when I talk to writers. Like, they're worried about whether or not they're wasting their talent, whether they're any good writers, whether they should be doing something else. And those are huge questions that just come out as something as small as like, should I be outlining? When somebody is just diving in and they're not outlining, it's a different conception about themselves entirely as writers. And I'm not saying that one thing is right and one thing is wrong. There are people who have tremendous success outlining, but oftentimes when a writer approaches me with the question of, should I be outlining? It's because it just sits on the top of a deep set of questions that they haven't answered yet. I think it can be tremendously fruitful if people throw themselves into it and they see what emerges. On the other hand, it's like one of the things that can come out of it is a sense that there is a backbone and that it's a backbone that you can count on.
I usually prefer character-based stories because you don't know where you're going, and your writers can feel that for themselves, like, where is this going? However, having said that, I've seen people that write plot-based stories and they pull it off brilliantly.
I'm reminded of a line from the movie Memento. It's like a murder mystery, except that everything is backwards. Everything runs backwards narratively. And there's a moment when the main character says to his wife, who has been reading a dog-eared mystery novel, the main character says, like, why do you keep reading that mystery novel? If you know how it ends, isn't that enough? You don't need to read it again. It's obviously a meta commentary on the entire movie. The fact is that it's incredibly rich if you watch it over again. Kind of tongue-in-cheekily saying, if you know what all the moves are within this piece, like within this work, then doesn't that remove all the pleasure? And the answer is not necessarily, like even something where everything has been plotted out in advance, like a stereotypical detective novel or something like that there can be something tremendously pleasurable about going over something that is incredibly plot, it's kind of like, and exactly the moves that it's going to make. Maybe it's me kind of like arguing with myself.
In fantasy literature, is it better to be original or is it better to recombine different inspirations? On this video over here, the three of us talk about it, and let me know what you think about that actually, because this is a very important topic. Like, comment, and subscribe. Check out Andrew's socials, check out Ray's socials as well. Stay epic and peace.